Okay, so picture the Quake series for me. Quake 1 was a gothic-themed first-person shooter with a soundtrack that was done by Trent, Reznor, and innovative 3D rendering graphics. Quake 2 shifted to sci-fi, introduced a new narrative with the war against the Strogg, and multiplayer that blew up in popularity, probably more so than the original Quake did. Quake 3 Arena was a multiplayer-only game that was a part of a new and niche subgenre of FPS games called arena shooters. Despite Unreal Tournament being the first one, or maybe Nerf Arena Blast, Quake 3 was a fan favorite and its influence was massive, for better or possibly worse. These three games are held up universally on stools and are considered some of the greatest FPS games ever made. And then there is Quake 4. It's got the Stroggification scene, and, well, that's pretty much it. Quake 4 occupies a strange and awkward spot in the Quake community. Now, objectively speaking, Quake 4 is a good game, but there's this loud minority that hates it for no reason, so it does make me wonder, why does Quake 4 get this treatment, and why didn't it leave a legacy? Even if you make the argument that this isn't a real Quake game, it's still a great game. It's well paced, the gameplay loop is addicting, and id Tech 4's graphics in some areas are amazing for 2005. This was a pretty graphically demanding game at the time. Quake 4 is a really good game that shows that Raven Software knows how to make a quality FPS. If you haven't played Quake 4, I highly recommend it. It's a game that deserves way more appreciation and love. The only thing people seem to remember about this game is the body horror and, well, most famously, the Stroggification scene. Back in the day, I only loosely heard about the Quake series. I never played the games or really knew anything about the series. It wasn't until the early 2010s on YouTube where I saw the Stroggification scene and, well, it horrified me to put it simply. Which is kind of funny to look back on, since this was sort of my introduction to Quake. But also not really. I still heard of Quake, but this memory is what stuck out to me the most. As much as I want to talk about the horror aspects of Quake 4, that is sadly not what I am talking about today.
Except, I am.
Wait, whoa, how did you get on my monitor right now?
Don't worry about that right now, I'm just here to promote myself.
Alright, whatever, make it quick.
Sweet! So my video is taking the concept that Quake 4 is actually a horror game, and has been this entire time, we've just not really taken the steps to notice it. I mean, yeah, obviously, it's a war game, and war is hell, and war can be horrific, but Quake 4 takes it in a very special direction, but I don't need to go on about that right now. I'm gonna be doing an entire video on that, so keep an eye out for it.
Hey, so how are you gonna get off my monitor anyways?
You know, I actually don't really know how to do that. I really wasn't thinking about how I would do that when I showed up here.
Oh, maybe you just go to the right or something. That might do something.
Oh, all right. Yeah, I'll go this way.
Whoa, you're on my main monitor now.
Sorry. I'm just gonna keep going right and I'll see where that takes me.
Yeah, try that. Take care, man. Is he gone? Yeah, he's probably fucked. So back to that question again. Why didn't Quake 4 leave a legacy? Now, I don't want this to be a Quake 4 bashing video. In fact, I have a pretty unpopular opinion where this is one of my favorite games in the series. Doing a 1 hour long retrospective video about it is very tempting. But despite my love for Quake 4, even I have to admit the flaws. Let's start simple and talk about the gaming landscape at the time. The last Quake game before Quake 4 was in 1999. Not only is that a 6-year gap between releases, but in the late 90s there was a bunch of new Quake content being released. Whether these were new games, expansion packs, or even mods. By the time Quake 4 came out, the industry had dramatically changed and it kinda had to adapt to it. It also didn't help that it was a sequel to Quake 2 when all the other Quake games were varied. Plus in 2005, there were a lot of FPS games that came out that year. Fear pretty much stole the spotlight in my opinion. Rip Monolith, I miss them every day. Not only that, Activision was sort of trying to compete with their release of Call of Duty 2, and they just didn't really seem interested or confident in the project. Not even to say that Quake 4 didn't have a chance. After all, it was a new Quake game. Plus, 2005 was just an amazing year for FPS games. its sales are kind of unknown, and that's a little odd considering I can give you the sale numbers of Quake 1, 2, and 3, but from what we do know, it seemed to have done well on the Xbox 360 with 100,000 copies being sold in the UK. Although that is just the United Kingdom for the Xbox 360, if other countries were similar, then that means Quake 4 just did fine financially. Now, when we look at the meta scores and reviews of Quake 4, they are actually much lower than the other Quake games. Even Quake Wars got a higher score than Quake 4. Like, how the hell is that even possible? Who the fuck played Quake Wars? But I think one of the major reasons for Quake 4's reputation is, of course, the gameplay. Quake 4 is just like Doom 3. It is not hard to notice. They are on the same engine, there are similar visuals, and while the gameplay isn't completely identical, Quake 4 doesn't really escape Doom 3's feel. When you move in the game, you can just kinda sense it immediately. Doom 3 has gotten a little bit of a redemption arc over the years, with more people showing love and respect for the game compared to when it was first released. So why hasn't Quake 4 gotten this treatment yet? In my opinion, I actually thought Quake 4 was better than Doom 3. Yes, I stand by my statement. I get what SHOUTOUT was going for. The first half of the game is really slow, metaphorically and literally. However, the midpoint is where you start getting faster and it almost starts feeling like a Quake game. So for people who love Doom 3, Quake 4 should be, in theory, just as good. Longtime fans just did not like this, but you have to keep in mind again that the gaming landscape had changed since Quake's heyday. It was all about the Half-Lifes and the Halos now, with most FPS games around this time taking inspiration from one of those two. I have this opinion that the golden years of FPS games were from 1998 to 2007. Maybe because I grew up in this era, but these were some of my favorite games of all time. Quake 4 came out around this time, and I think that's why I love it so much. Quake 4 had a lot more emphasis on story this time around compared to the other Quake games. There are actually some moments in the game where you could skip it and not listen to anyone, and others where...
Please, I need help, Lieutenant.
Shut the hell up, Strauss! Half the squad is dead, so why don't you just be quiet while we pick up the pieces?
Yeah, you couldn't do anything. That kinda hurt the gameplay for older fans of the series who just weren't really invested in the story and just wanted to blast shit. Also, those vehicle and turret sections are just terrible. I kinda wish SHOUTOUT like cut them out of the game or something. But hey, Quake isn't just known for the single player, it's also known for its multiplayer. Multiplayer is a huge component of the Quake series. It's bread and butter. It's kind of like having a Doom game without Doom Guy in it. It just doesn't make any goddamn sense. Now, the problem with Quake 4 is that Quake 4 has a multiplayer in a game where they tried to advertise the single player as the main attraction. This is one of the biggest reasons why Quake 4 didn't take off, in my opinion. If you want to play Quake 3, then go play Quake 3. Similar to Doom 3's multiplayer, nobody really plays it. I never really knew a Quake game could be this dead. Hell, I probably could find a game of Quake Wars. Now for Quake 4, I am sure there were more active players at the time. Enough players to spawn updates and map packs at least. But without a good Quake multiplayer that stands on its own, it kinda suffered for only being remembered for its campaign, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. So the multiplayer might not be that exciting, but I guess the next best thing to look forward to are the mods. Thus the community would make a ton of mods for this game. Right? Doom 3 has a lot of different mods out there, from graphic mods to gameplay overhauls or completely new experiences. Quake 4, surprisingly, doesn't really have this. It does have graphic mods. It would not be an id Tech 4 game without those. There are some gameplay rebalance mods here and there, as well as Quake 4 Team Fortress, but that is basically it. This is just going off of ModDB, but when you look at Quake mods for each game, you will notice that Quake 4 barely has any compared to its counterparts. That's a real damn shame. However, I did leave out two notable mods, False Dawn and Fractured Strogg. Two mods that really need a shout out and to be played by people. False Dawn is a custom single-player campaign that is just pure Quake 4 gameplay, with graphical and gameplay tweaks of course. It's a pretty solid 1 to 2 hour time killer, keeping all the elements of what made Quake 4 work. I feel like if this was the Quake 4 we got, a lot more people would have loved it. This mod shows that Quake 4 had good mechanics and enemies for a Quake game. Did Raven underutilize their potential talent? Maybe. But if you finish Quake 4, go straight to this mod. You will love it. Then there's Fractured Strogg. This gives me a little bit of hope for Quake 4 mods, and since I've been following this mod from the beginning of its announcement, I figured I might as well interview the creator.
I'm Valkyrie733. I'm the creator of a bunch of Gmod add-ons, like Halo-related ones. A Quake 4 mod called Fracture Strogg. It's just a reskin, a overcomplicated reskin for Quake 4. It makes it look like it's Halo.
Before this project, Valkyries worked on the Doom 3 mod Doom 2553, which was a Halo-themed reskin of the game. So he shifted over to Quake 4 to create a similar Halo-style overhaul mod, but for Quake 4.
It was just a natural step. Like, I just wanted to see what it looked like, because Quake 4 has more, like, in-depth, like, characters, friendly characters, and cutscenes and whatnot. So I was like, oh, I wonder how cool this would look with, like, Halo Marines running around, and it just went from there.
This is hands down the best Quake 4 mod out there, making me love the game even more. It has new weapon models, animations, gameplay retweaks, enemy designs, and adding much more engaging music. Amazing how just changing a music track can affect the mood. I asked more about the development of Fractured Strogg, as well as any cut content.
I mean, there's some stuff I scrapped, because I wanted to get it out. There's like a lot more updates to maps and whatnot to like make just like it look more distinct. I also wanted to have some like Quake 1 influence in the Waste chapter. Like I wanted to make it where if you listen closely, you can hear the ambient, like one of the ambient tracks from Quake 1, like echoing down the halls. The entirety of like the levels right after being Stroggified, like before you get to the Hannibal, would have been like in the polar regions of Strogos. So like lots of snow, heavy winds, kind of like the Thing vibes. Another thing was with the certain boss fight that happens near the end of the game. You're gonna have that character you fight was gonna pull out a AI chip from his helmet before he succumbs. It was kind of like a suggestion of my friend. My friend suggested that idea, but I never got around to doing it, and just ended up not like doing it. Instead of using the Hybrid Blaster, there would have been a parallel to Kane with him using the dual blasters. The death scene. There's going to be a when you died in the mod, you just want to do like a Soma-esque death screen where you'd see like flashes of what happens to Kane after he dies, like a flashing screen before the game over screen appears. Like you'd see like there'd be two different ones, like one before Stroggification, one afterwards. So like before it would be like the in Halo CE when Jenkins dies, you see like his helmet like HUD freak out and like do like what the fuck just happened, like wounded, incapacitated, KIA question mark. It would do that, basically implying like, okay, either Kane just died or they recovered his corpse and are going to Strogify him.
What I enjoy most about the mod is how it really tries to make the Halo universe and Strogg War work together somehow, making it kind of a mixture of Quake 2 and Halo, which blows me away how there isn't a Quake 2 aesthetic mod for Quake 4. It makes you wonder, is modding Quake 4 easier than it looks, or more difficult than Doom 3?
Well, for one, obviously, the Quake 4 source code was never released. Obviously, we had the Doom 3 one, but Quake 4 had a lot of engine changes. Another thing is, Doom 3 is much easier to mod, while Quake 4 requires you to like actually edit the modding SDK and compile it, which is actually really hard to do now because a lot of modern compilers like Visual Studio won't compile it anymore. It's much harder to mod Quake 4. Yeah, it's more streamlined. Everything's a lot more organized in Doom 3. Actually, changing the script of a gun requires you to edit the SDK, which is a huge hurdle for me.
Valkyrie733 is working on a new mod where he's going back to his Doom 2553 idea and giving it a much-needed redo. So far, the new mod is looking incredible and very promising. If you have the time, you need to play Fractured Strogg. It's a mod that got very little notice from people, and is probably my favorite mod of 2025. As for other Quake 4 mods, if you look hard enough, you might find something interesting. 3 in particular were worth noting in my opinion. The first one is Quake 4 Eternal. It isn't that impressive or crazy, it just changes some things like the movement and no reload. But I feel like this makes the game too easy, since the game wasn't really designed with this in mind. Stroggo's Lost Marine started out as a Quake 2 remake mod over 15 years ago. I did speak with the developer and he told me how he got back to working on it, though with slow progress. Looking at some of the old footage, it looks incredible. I would have loved for this to have come out. The last one to mention is the Star Wars themed mod where everyone is a clone trooper. Now this looks amazing, but from what I know and what the developer has claimed, this mod is long dead and gone. That is so sad. I would have loved to have played this. So that is the modding scene. I hope one day people get around to creating things, or maybe the source code gets leaked. I don't know, a man can dream. Everything I mentioned is in the description down below. There was one more thing about Quake 4 I wanted to talk about before we end things. Quake 4 was going to have an expansion pack simply known as Quake 4 Awakening. Publicly, not much is known about this project. However, I do have a lot of news about it. You might say, what is my source on this? While I was sleeping, the Quake Angel came to me in a dream and gave me this knowledge. Jokes aside, everything that I'm saying is 100% credible. You just have to trust me on this. Quake 4 Awakening was being developed by Ritual Entertainment. They were brought on because of their work on Quake Scourge of Armagon, and this would have been a return to their roots. They had just gotten done with Counter-Strike Condition Zero. The team behind this project was really excited and tried pouring all of their creative talent into it. This would have been a continuation of Quake 4's storyline, but you would have played as a completely new Marine as part of Nomad 3. For this new Marine protagonist, he would have been fast by default. No stroggification scene, just good old-fashioned Quake action gameplay. The SMC got a distress signal from a Strogg outpost on a distant planet that would have been crucial against the Strogg war effort. The expansion would have started with an airborne turret section with a full invasion of an ice planet. You would have seen Dragon Company getting shot down, and after landing you would have to save Corporal Kane. The planet was a mixture of an icy landscape and Strogg technology that served more as a research station where they were trying to create a new army and biotech weapons. Awakening's ice planet would have focused on the origins of the Strogg Empire and their history as a species. Having the expansion set on an ice planet was something new for the series, as well as the idTech 4 engine. This would have been able to create groundbreaking shaders and shapes with massive environments. Ritual also wanted to keep the body horror of Quake 4 since they saw a bunch of it during Raven's development. The first location was a Strogg Trienthanite core facility, and it's where you and your teammates learn about the Strogg Queen named Valkyrene, who is buried beneath ice where we can only guess for a long period of time. This is where the name Awakening comes from, by the way. This group of Strogg were going to have more new and returning enemies. The tank was definitely going to make a big return in the game, and the art style would have been a callback to Quake 2. There was a new enemy called Grunt Workers, and later changed to Wretch. They were once from another alien world where they picked brains over bronze. They were some of the most intelligent Strogg, but also did the more undesirable labor. Being small creatures, they would have jumped at the player and climbed the ceiling. They were basically the gremlin of the Strogg, and another callback to their first Quake expansion, Scourge of Armagon. One mechanic from them is that they would have been the monkey on the back of the Strogg and would have been thrown at you. New weapons would have introduced the core gun, which would have acted like a Strogg harpoon gun. The napalm launcher that would have shot out fireballs and lit the ground on fire, basically being an alternative weapon for the grenade launcher. There were talks of having a flamethrower in the very early stages of development, but it didn't really look like it got that far and it might have just merged with the napalm launcher. There was going to be a grappling hook that would have been used to navigate the traverse landscape, mainly in the last half of the game. The gravity turret was a gravity gun-like machine that the wretches would have used for maintenance. There would have been a section or two where you would have gotten to use it against incoming enemies. In the second act of the expansion, Strauss would have been captured by the Strogg and you would have to break him out of prison to learn more about Queen Valkyrene. The Strogg were trying to look for a cure for her and wanted to bring her back to full health. She confused with the Nexus, summoning Macrons on demand and being the key to the Macrons' existence. If stopped, it would end the human-Strogg war and the creation of the Macrons. Awakening might have been a definitive end to the human-Strogg war conflict. With the prison being on full lockdown, the player would have to fight Painlord, a huge Strogg boss who is made up of human torsos and lived off of the pain. After getting back with command and your officers to get more information about the Queen, the Strogg would have attacked your main ship where you would have had to hold out like it was the Battle of the Alamo. But for the final act, you would have made your way to the cryogenics facility, where you would have seen frozen body parts and partially developed embiotes. The cryogenic facility is the most important facility of the Strogg, and in a surprising turn for them, they cared so much about the place that they made sure that it was cleaned and preserved. It would have had similar vibes to Camino from Star Wars and would have been heavily fortified. You blow through 3 security checkpoints where you would have had 3 different game-like mechanics. There was a mounted turret segment, liquid nitrogen vents that the player could use to freeze the Strogg and shatter them into pieces, and more gravity turret gameplay. Since there was a lot of ice, there were segments where you would have had to worry about freezing to death. The Space Marine awakens Queen Valkyries after doing a puzzle that melts the ice in a chase section on a speeder bike afterwards. At some point in the story, the Space Marine might have been infected with Queen Valkyrie's blood and would be slowly mutating over the course of the game. Both the Marine and Valkyries would have one last final battle where both sides would perish in a Mary Jesus-like pose. At the ending, other Space Marines would have finally charged in, but they would have been too late to save you. It's a very bittersweet and poetic way to end an expansion pack, as well as the Human Strogg War. Of course, the final battle was mainly one of the end goals for the team. A lot could have changed during development if they had more time to iron things out. The story outline that I read to you was a very early rough draft of it, but most of the story beats would have still remained intact. Since Awakening was being developed at the same time as Quake 4, Ritual didn't really know where Raven was taking their story. This is why there isn't really a conclusion to Strauss or much of a role for Kane in this. So many new enemies, weapons, environments, and storylines. An add-on that sounded too good to be true, and sadly was. So, what happened? Like I said earlier about Activision, when it came to Quake 4, they just weren't that confident in the project. Maybe someone at Activision wanted to milk the Quake IP as much as possible. Some accountant probably did some numbers and realized they wouldn't get a bonus from doing an expansion. We can only make reasonable assessments about the cancellation. It was a changing market, Call of Duty was taking over, and Quake was just a game from the past. It probably could have sold decently too, but all because Activision was being greedy and wanted more money, they killed it. The hardest part about all of this for the team was that Quake 4 wasn't even released yet. It was dead on arrival and Ritual just got to be the unlucky ones. They went into full crunch mode and even got into the alpha stage of development. As a company, it left a deep scar on them that was never able to heal. Some people left and morale was too low afterwards. The expansion isn't lost media though. Many different builds still exist out there. A good chunk of Awakening's assets were reused for the multiplayer for an update, whether these were maps or the napalm launcher, and yes, this gun was going to be in Awakening. You can even spawn it in the single player and everything about it works fine for the most part. Even still has the reload animations. Activision basically stole Ritual's assets with minor tweaks and basically called it their own without their consent. It is a depressing story, and I know many people will be saying that this project sounds awesome. Even if it was 20 years ago, I want to thank everyone who worked on Awakening at Ritual and my empathy for their wasted talent. When I look at some of the concept art and ideas here, the only thing I can think of is, damn, that's classic Ritual. It's been 20 years since Quake 4 came out, and it almost doesn't feel like it. It's always going to be strange to me that this era of gaming kind of has a negative outlook from certain people, yet now it is considered retro. Despite this not being the most positive video about Quake 4, I mainly wanted to address the game's reputation and why it didn't really take off. I love Quake 4, and I honestly recommend giving it a try if you haven't already. It might not be objectively the best Quake game, but it is my lovely guilty pleasure, and I hope IDSOFTWARE one day finishes the storyline. I know eventually I'll have to make a deep dive video about Quake 4 and give it its own review, but until then, I'll have to leave it there. Take care, everyone.
EDC?
What the fuck are you
EDC,
doing on
man,
my
I'm
TV?
sorry.
Get the fuck
I don't know how
off!
to get out of here, man.
No, dude, I need you to get off. Like, I want to watch shit later. I don't even know how the fuck you got here. Like, I don't give a shit. Just figure it out. Just get the fuck off.